I got a list here of 20 things that are happening right now that I've been saying we should expect to occur, that's going to assist us in letting us know where we are on God's time clock. There are videos, because I'm going to be recapping things to show you that that's what's happening now. At times where I was going through my lowest points of my life, where you're going to see videos of where I was in the middle of cancer. And I was very sickly, so I'm giving you fair warning. At one point, I was down to about 135 pounds. If you don't know where I started, I started at 200. So you're going to see me go from having a decent amount of weight to having no weight, being ribs. Just so if you don't want to see that stuff, then you're not going to want to watch this. However, I've elected, because of the things I said in those videos, I deemed them more important, that I got the word out and said those things, and I will say them to you again, more important than the way I looked. So I'm sorry if it's going to bother some of you. You may not want to watch this. I thank God that today, after having lost 1.5 inches off my stature, I got my weight's coming back, and I'm healed in Jesus' name. No more signs of cancer, thanks to you and God and your prayers. I'm going to be skipping over some of these because you're well aware of them. Some of you that's been with the channel long enough know some of the very first things I said when I got on to YouTube. I want to reiterate one thing. I am not patting myself on the back. This is not about an I told you so. This is simply so you know where we are on God's time clock, and that what we are seeing right now is not simply happenstance, circumstances that are just happening randomly and watching news. No, these things we were to expect them, and I said to expect them. So let's go through some of them. The first ones I'm just going to pass right on by for the sake of time, because this is a long video already. I already know how this is going to lay out. The first one I want to say, I'm going to skip right on through, but I want to point it out. When I came onto YouTube in 2016, towards the end of the Obama administration, I was saying we should look for protest, rioting, anarchy, martial law. That's how the escalation would go. At that time, during the entire Obama administration, at least, and not even really, we had war in Bush administration, we were all fine. America was fine. It was a different place. So when I'm saying protests are going to happen, and rioting and lawlessness and anarchy and martial law, people were kind of saying, what you talking about? You're not making any sense. And yet today,
we're seeing today a lack of authority. We see anarchy, lawlessness.
Next one I'm going to move right on through. There's no point in saying it because it's already happening. And it's very interesting what's already happening. I was telling you folks, we were to expect, based on certain criteria. I did a video on this, so I'm not going to get into this again, showing how there was a fulfillment of prophecy, that Israel would be attacked under this particular criteria, and we were to look for how they would be attacked. Where people were saying it was going to be Russia was going to attack Israel. And yet I was saying, no, they're going to be killed, raped, tortured. I gave specifics. I even got in one of my books on how the evil, where it was coming from. Now, I explain this. And these are things that people who had the companion were looking for, but I'll give you the details. Page 122 of the book, The Companion. Listen. I'm sorry, but needless to say, hear me, needless to say, the greater the torture, pain inflicted, terror experienced upon death by killing off every living thing, man, young men, women, children, fruit of the womb, unborn babies, supposedly hastens the coming of their so-called delusional prophet. The crazy thing is, King Wacko ain't coming. Nobody that I was aware of was saying to look for it, and then we got to see it happen. But nobody, I don't know where these people were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They didn't know to look for this.
Who would have ever thought, even a year ago, that there would be this massive potential war that's already happening? Well, there is a war in Israel, but even an expanded war in the Middle East could involve Iran, it could involve Yemen, the Houthis, you have Hezbollah.
If you want to do a search online, put in Israel, prophecy, Hamas, something, any one of those kind of wordings. In fact, put all three words in. You will see over the last 5 months, I believe it's been about 5 months, I did it a month ago just to see hundreds, folks, of prophecy, people prophesying where we are, and now where we are, and what to look for, and what's coming next. And it kind of irked me that yours truly, you heard it here. I said, it's not Russia, that it was going to come from the surrounding nations, that they were going to attack Israel under this particular criteria. I think that's now been, that's a moot point who it is now. We know who it is now.
They're Islamic.
We're seeing the beginnings of it. I told you to expect this, and I also told you this. I said what you were to look for immediately, once Israel got attacked, that we would then see touted like clockwork. And what happened? Like clockwork. Here comes the Antichrist. Here's what's going to happen with the Antichrist. He's going to come on the scene. And that began to happen immediately. And that's not such a big deal other than to say, I told you so. This is what we should expect. And now that it started to happen, we're looking at the beginnings of, not the fullness of the prophecy, but the beginnings of it. Has put a lot of speculation to bed. I did some videos back when, hear me folks, I did some videos right after the presidential inauguration of the Biden administration. Immediately that night, that day, in fact, the weeks before, I was beginning to feel it, but it wasn't until that day everything just clicked. It clicked, and I had the Spirit of God was there, and I knew, and I immediately went onto YouTube, and I began to tell you what we were seeing was perfect. I don't see Trump coming back. I'm just telling you that right there. I know many of you are looking February 19th, and you're looking to March 4th. Don't put your hopes in February 19th, any hopes in March 4th, or any other date. Nothing's changed. All we had was exposure. And before Biden had done one thing, he hadn't even done anything yet other than walk into the White House. Within a month's time, I believe it was in February, I began to tell you we are now in a perfect state, the condition that we needed to be in, a necessary condition. No, we have a weak president sitting in the seat right now. Folks, I'm going to take you all the way back to 2021 again, with the first year of when he's sitting in the White House. I kept saying all we're getting is what felt to me like exposure. I got so angry at all of it, and God was telling me all he was doing was reading the verdicts and the charges. What kept happening to me, it's been probably going about a year, but it made sense to me, has made even more sense to me now, and I want you to get this. All we have been seeing, it's like a person standing before a judge who's being read the charges and the verdicts. You've been found guilty of. You've been found guilty of. You've been found guilty of. Guilty, 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 guilty. Guilty. Are you ready for sentencing? Now, last year, I took note. I took note of a man who I deemed to be prophetically gifted. I don't know that he's a prophet or not. One way, it doesn't matter to me one or the other than what he said.
And the Spirit of God said to me, Bobby, do you know the theme and the thrust for this year's Shepherd's Rod? I said, no. And he said, I do. And then he said, do you want to know? And I said, yes, I do. I want to know. And he said, the gavel of God and the verdict of God.
So when I heard that, I was like, yes, 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 yes. And the interesting thing about it, he's applying it to the year mostly for 2024. That's what he is taking for 2024. And to me, it made sense. As you've been following the channel and been watching the videos, some of you, you will know why I believe that is applicable to right now. I have continued to say, and I want everybody to get it. I'm not going to continue on with this because there's lots I could bring in here, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to. We do know this, and it should go without saying, this administration is the weakest administration that the world has ever seen, and it is a notable condition, a mandatory condition that we are in this and will remain in this. This the presidential seat and the administration right now are in a condition that is considered to be weak. And everybody looks at this administration as weak. Everybody does. That's the state America is in right now. That's where we're at. We are going to move to a point to where we move out of the weakened state into a state that is considered to be strong. The news media has taken the very wording that I have.
Well, the root cause is Iran, and the root cause is our inability to respond to this kind of stuff. It's weakness coming from the White House that's been going on since the very early days of the Biden administration. Instead, we're doing nothing, and it's being perceived as complete weakness on our part, and it's only going to get worse until we get strong and do something about what's happening.
Put this together, folks. Why do you think no matter what Trump does, they want to attack him immediately? Oh, it takes nothing. He has to sneeze the wrong way and they're going to attack him. But when it comes to the Biden administration or his family or everybody else involved in government that's been on the left, does anything ever happen?
If you look at the statute of limitations on the crimes that Joe Biden is allegedly being accused of, David Weiss has made it so that if Republicans are able to gather enough evidence to bring a prosecutorial case against the president, they might not even be able to do so because he has deliberately run out the clock on the statute of limitations, making it impossible to prosecute him for these crimes.
Well, it's becoming more and more clear than ever that there's collusion between the Department of Justice and the Hunter Biden administration. We know they're lockstep in terms of covering up what seems to be just overall corruption.
But this guy is done and committed crime after crime after crime, most of them on video of his own cell phone, and yet none of this is going to affect him at all?
It's madness. It's madness.
Madness is a great word for it, because if I feel like I don't even understand the world I live in, right? Like, I feel like if I were to commit any one of the hundreds of crimes you've outlined that he's committed, I would be in jail for a long time.
Oh, a long time. A long time. Yeah. You may not leave jail. If we committed a quarter of the crimes that he has committed, I can't remember. I saw a total just the other day. It was like 400 and some crimes that are provable crimes. We did not even 100 of those. We would never see the outside of a cell. Never.
And yet this guy's just going to walk with nothing. Nothing after all of this? Is this really how this is going to end?
I said, folks, again, if it's simply exposure we're looking at, I'm going to get to this. I'm going to make something make sense in a second. Exposure, then you shouldn't expect anything to happen. We've watched it. For the last decade, we've seen these exposures come out. This is being exposed. That's being exposed. How many times did you or your friends... I couldn't tell you how many times I kept waiting. They're going to get locked up. Look at all the evidence. Right? Look at all the evidence. Look at this. Look at that. Look at this. Everybody needs to be locked up. And you just kept understanding all of the corruption that we kept seeing. And nothing ever would happen. I began to become angry. I don't even want to even know of the next scandal. And there's still scandals. No, nothing's going to happen. Got to go with Hunter Biden on this. I mean, There are so many things going on that I guarantee you nothing will happen. Because of man's actions, God is going to bring judgment as only He can do. And the retribution and things we go through will be because of our own actions. God is going to bring judgment, but He will have done it. He will have cleaned house. Not man, not a person, not Trump. I'm sorry. You need to keep listening to what I got to tell you, folks. These things aren't just happening by coincidence that we're watching these things. I have said for several, since Biden took office, I've said repeatedly, and we're watching it play out. I'll show you this in a second, but I said repeatedly that the Democrats will not lose control this time, because they're not going to lose control. It's not a fluke, folks. They are not going to lose control. And they're getting everything ready where I've been saying for the longest time where we're headed. I've said it more than once. I promise you, folks, and we're getting to watch this play out, the Democratic Party will maintain their control. They had control for a while, but now they've lost it. So what do you do to regain your control? What does this mean to you? Where do you think this is going to take us?
So they can't lose. They will do anything to win. So how do they do that? They're going to go to war with Russia is what they're going to do. There will be a hot war between the United States and Russia in the next year. And
Really?
Yes, of course. They want it anyway.
Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that needs to defend itself. My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away. We will not bow down. I will not bow down.
I don't think we'll win it, but that's a separate analysis. But I think it's a political matter. They need to declare war footing in order to assume war powers in order to win. I believe that. And I think the evidence suggests that's true. I think that could easily happen. I think we could Tonkin Gulf our way into it, where all of a sudden missiles land in Poland. The Russians did it. Our NATO allies been attacked. We're going to war. I could see that happening very easily. Otherwise, I would bet my house on it. We are going to war with Russia. And of course, the stakes are everything, our life on the planet. I mean, these are the two biggest nuclear arsenals in the world.
America's going to become strong. You're not even going to see a president, folks. I've been saying this. I gave a prophecy back in 2018. Jerusalem's U.S. embassy is overthrown. Did you hear what I said? In fact, there's more to that word. It will be laid waste and desolate. Now, what's funny, if you want to call it funny, since then and until recently, which is absolutely crazy, we have gotten to see the Islamic factions attacking our U.S. embassies overseas.
Just breaking. European embassies are under assault. Islamists have planted a Palestinian flag into an embassy compound in Lebanon, and tear gas has been deployed against a growing mob. This is almost 40 years to the day when a suicide bomber drove a truck packed with explosives into our Marine barracks in Beirut, killing 241 American service members. Embassies all over the region are under attack. The Israeli embassy in Turkey is being surrounded and peppered with fireworks. Jordan is also seeing Islamic protests swarm the Israeli embassy. The Iron Dome is being tested. The war appears to be opened on two fronts, and Iran is mobilizing the entire Islamic world as embassies are under attack.
That's an act of war, folks, an act of war. And now we're seeing it happen. So Steve Cochran is still reiterating to you, now we're getting to see how it can happen, can't we? Now you're seeing how it happened. I'll tell you something else that we're now getting to watch on the news. When I first started, folks, listen to me. Listen to me. out of everything I'm telling you, other than here's where we are, here's where we are, I want you to pay attention to this one. I have said repeatedly when I came onto YouTube and I wrote back 2012, and I knew before 2012,
Russia is going to attack the United States via nuclear warfare, a nuclear strike. They are going to attack all major cities, and they are going to go bye-bye. Did you hear what I said? Russia is going to attack the United States via nuclear warfare. And when nukes go off, you get earthquakes. Do a search online.
are you hearing me? She is going to destroy us.
News now, Russian President Vladimir Putin is threatening nuclear war. In his annual State of the Nation address, Putin warned that if Western countries send their own troops to Ukraine, they risk global nuclear war.
Speaking of nuclear weapons, President Vladimir Putin has been waving his nuclear wand yet again, threatening the West. Do you take it seriously? I mean, how many times do we have to hear the same thing?
Well, of course, we have to take it seriously. Nuclear weapons are the most serious form of destruction on the planet, and if any dictator, whether it's Putin or Xi Jinping, makes threats, you have to take them seriously.
Now, you may not have been paying attention to the news, and some of you simply think those are just, as news reporters say, these are just more threats. Putin's just talking.
The longer this war goes on, from the very beginning, Biden said that the U.S. goal is to defeat Russia militarily, or have Ukraine defeat Russia militarily. But he has also said that if Russia were in a position where it was being defeated militarily, it would possibly resort to using nuclear weapons. And so our policy is in some ways contradictory.
This is what I need you to grasp. Now we're getting to hear the threats and the rhetoric, the saber rattling. And the administration is very, very well aware of this. I'm sorry if I'm getting a little crazy. You need to hear what I'm telling you. The United States is going to be nuked by Russia, and you're not hearing anybody else tell you this. In Daniel chapter 7, a word of knowledge via the Holy Spirit revealed, unsealed what it is. And it is, that first beast is the betrayal of Israel.
Our president is going, our administration is going to turn their back on Israel. We're going to turn our back on, where we could go in and repel the enemy, we turn our back. And then, that's prophecy number 3. Our president turns her back on Israel, and we don't help them. And I got to tell you, that makes us guilty as sin. When you could have done something and you do nothing. I mean, it's like the watchman on the wall that has to able to warn Israel. All he has to do is just warn. We could do a whole lot more than warn. We don't do anything. We help them, and I think we take some into refuge. But the goal is to let them get out of the land, and then the land is just simply fought over. Israel's removed from land. Now, here's what brings me back to number 1, and here's where I start getting involved. What president does this? Who's going to do this?
The United States is going to betray Israel, and we are already working on it.
And the response is maddening. If you have the Biden administration slow-walking Israel's ground invasion, telling them to aid their enemy when we know that money is going to Hamas.
More than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed, most of whom are not Hamas. Thousands and thousands of innocents, women and children, girls and boys, also orphaned. Nearly 2 million more Palestinians under bombardment or displacement. Homes destroyed, neighborhoods in rubble, cities in ruin. Families without food, water, medicine. It's heartbreaking. I've been working nonstop to establish an immediate ceasefire that would last for 6 weeks to get all the prisoners released, all the hostages released. Tonight, I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day. To the leadership of Israel, I say this: humanitarian assistance cannot be a secondary consideration or a bargaining chip. Protecting and saving innocent lives has to be a priority. As we look to the future, the only real solution to to the situation is a two-state solution over time.
They have a $350 million annual military budget. You have people still talking about a two-state solution ceasefire? When you had Hamas terrorists cut a pregnant woman's stomach open, take the baby out, stab the baby, and then shoot the woman in the head. And you're talking about, some sort of reserved response from Israel? I mean, it is actual insanity.
But it appears the Biden administration is looking to back away from its steadfast support for Israel. Surprise, surprise. The Washington Post reporting, quote, what began as a bear hug strategy of intense backing by President Biden has become one in which U.S. officials facing growing blowback at home and internationally have distanced themselves from scorched earth Israeli tactics.
So first of all, it's a slap in the face to our greatest ally. And secondly, it once again furthers the interests of Hamas. Because of our fear of escalation, we are stoking the global condemnation of Israel, and we are not supporting them in their ability to defend themselves because we are joining that chorus. Oh, limit this. Oh, don't do this. Instead of saying, we support you, come hell or high water, whatever you need will be there. And Israel is probably like, we don't actually need you at all. We just need you to stand down and support us silently instead of meddling in the global affairs. Because right now, Hamas is laughing, unfortunately and hideously, that we are now the greatest leaders in condemning Israel's ability to full-throatedly defend themselves.
We can't fathom that the United States would ever turn its back on Israel. And yet that's why it's prophetic. Steve Cochran's telling you it's not far off. We're already working towards it. We're already drawing lines, folks. We are not going to assist Israel in their time of need. We're going to leave them and hang them out to dry. And it's all deliberate. It's all been planned. America's working both sides of the fence, folks.
The fact that it's brokered by the US is an absolute joke. They're funding both sides of the war, and we all know it. They've even admitted. Just last week, God, they unlocked $10 billion to Iran. Weeks before the first conflict blowout, they unlocked $6 billion. They know exactly what they're doing. Matt Miller,
that's a little bit different to the funding and the support they're giving to Israel.
No, but they have been asked, you know what Iran is going to spend this money on, given what's currently going on in the world, can't have escaped your notice. And Matt Miller, spokesperson for the Biden administration, has said, yeah, we know Iraq's always been a disruptor, that's what Iran does. They know exactly what they are doing. This is an unhinged, mentally psychotic time to be unleashing any funds to Iran, and they're doing it
I think the person who brokered that deal is now mysteriously on unpaid, unseen, extended leave from the State Department.
Job.
But yes,
we all know there's way more people involved.
But to say the US's support for Iran is the same as its support for Israel is another form of completely false moral equivalency.
Well, I did not say that. I did not say that. I simply said I said they are funding both sides of the war, and they've been pulled up on it and have admitted it outright. We all know what Iran stands for. So why are you giving them $10 billion just last week?
I don't know about you, but this campaign now out of the United States and the State Department and the White House against Israel is really quite shocking and appalling. It's almost as if they've opened up another war front against the state of Israel. What's your take on this?
The United States is allowing Hamas to win. And if the United States doesn't change its policy, if President Biden doesn't get more strongly behind Israel, Hamas will win. If Hamas is allowed to win, its terrorism is coming to a theater near you. And that's what this administration, by tying Israel's hands, by saying to Israel, we're going to micromanage you, we're going to tell you how many soldiers you can send in, whether you can go into a hospital where they're holding hostages, whether you can go into Rafah, where the entire command structure of Hamas still survives and exists. If those restrictions are placed on Israel, it's an invitation to Hamas to just do it again and again and again. If crime pays, it's repeated. Look, if the Democrats want to win this election, they're going to have to move to the center, and they're going to have to support Israel. You do not win an election in America by turning against our ally Israel and supporting Hamas. The Biden administration is making a terrible mistake.
Something else I have told you repeatedly, told you in the graph. I believe it's on page 225, 222, something like that, in the graph. I told you long ago what to expect, and it had nothing to do with what anybody else said. And I found one other person that said it, and it was John Paul Jackson, that we should begin to expect anti-Semitism to rise in America.
There's going to be a huge growth of anti-Semitism.
America, should expect the attack on the Jew first.
In Brooklyn, New York, on Saturday, some 7,000 protesters took to the Brooklyn Bridge as Jewish people were warned, avoid the area. Again, I have to pause. This is New York. This is America. The answer from the NYPD or the authorities at Cornell or the authorities at Cooper Union, that other college incident we saw last week, is not avoid the area Jews. It's all hands on deck when it comes to the cops and security. And Jews are welcome here just like anywhere else in any square foot of America, because this is America. I don't understand this. Jews stay home. That's not the way forward. That's not the way forward. According to Fox News, one demonstrator told the crowd, "We are going to liberate Palestine. We liberated parts of it already, so get ready to get barbecued." The protesters scaled a statue of George Washington, waving the Palestinian flag. This video, courtesy of friend of the show, Julio Rosas, he's been on before, who, like he always is, was on scene to document it all. The crowd chanted Allahu Akbar, and at least one protester was heard saying, "Long live Hamas." Look at this. Hamas cheerleaders in Brooklyn, New York. Allahu Akbar. Really? Okay. It was all too much for one Israeli man who confronted the protesters in a fiery exchange.
They murdered my family, these fucking assholes. They murder our people. They murder babies, they cut their heads off. This is what you're supposed. All the Muslim countries, nobody want to open the border to take this garbage, right? One Muslim country open the border to take this garbage. Nobody
genocide. You support genocide.
Nobody want those people. Jewish proud Israeli and all these supporters, whatever they did in Israel, this is worse than the Holocaust, and they will do it here if they can, and they did it on September 11. Don't forget that.
Overseas, the images were just as dramatic. In London, around 100,000 protesters. Look at this in front of Big Ben. I mean, it's shoulder to shoulder. Flooded the city for the third consecutive weekend. A sound system led people to chant, "Stop arming Israel, stop bombing Gaza, and we are all Palestinian." And look at this video. It shows a masked man walking and waving the jihadist flag used by Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Stay on message, sir, or wait. Are you? Are you? Journalist Andy No posted video showing protesters chanting Allahu Akbar near the statue of Winston Churchill. Watch. In total, 11 people were arrested, including 2 for assaulting police officers. This was the scene in Istanbul, Turkey, where President Erdogan told the crowd, Hamas is not a terrorist organization. Israel is an occupier. Look at this film. My goodness, it's a sea of people. Erdogan then declared Israel, quote, a war criminal.
Anti-Israeli sentiment reaching a terrifying new low yesterday. Chilling footage shows an airport in Russia's heavily Muslim Dagestan region being stormed by an angry and hateful mob. Some carrying banners with anti-Semitic slogans, rushing onto the tarmac and searching for a flight of Jews and Israelis that landed from Tel Aviv. Horrifying footage. A small number of Jews and Israelis were reportedly left isolated by the enraged mob. One group even tried to break into what appears to be a secure staff area of the airport. And when they finally got inside, you can see a terrified woman in a hijab wave her hands as she tells the angry mob, there are no Israelis here. And just like that, they moved on. What if there was Israelis in there? Outside, they continued their search, even trying to flip a security car on the airport tarmac. The Jerusalem Post is reporting one rioter could be heard saying, quote, "We are here for the Jews. We came to kill them with the knives and shoot at them." Morgan, it's difficult for me to even say those words, let alone imagine the fear and abject terror of those poor Israelis and Jews that were in that situation. This is patently unacceptable.
Are you okay?
It's really hard to be a Jewish parent right now.
I'm sorry.
I thought about you this weekend too, Harris, when I saw this, because your husband is Jewish, and you know, whenever Hitler was going after the Nazis, they didn't care if your kids were half Jewish.
No.
And I thought about you as I was thinking about coming outnumbered, and I thought they would go after my daughter, they would go after yours as quickly as they would mine. And it's just terrifying to be a Jewish parent right now.
You know, oh, wow.
I'm sorry.
We haven't seen the hunting of Jews. And if you could translate all of it, and I've looked at a transcript here from Dagestan, it's hunting, it's catch them. It's what Emily, it's hard to say. Emily's so right about what they wanted to do, and they were screaming it.
The one thing I thought through all of this is I'm going to teach her to fight. You know, I'm wearing my Star of David. I'm not taking it off. I'm not going to hide. And that's what I'm going to teach my daughter. And as much as I look at these college campuses, and I look right here in New York City, that, you know, kids not much older than her had to barricade themselves in a library, had to be escorted out of the back. This is happening in America. And I said this to a friend over the weekend. We are not protected. We are not immune from this in America.
So that's come as no surprise that we would watch Jewish people being, to the point of martyrdom, folks, hit first. And then what happens next? If you have the graph and you know what I've said, what happens after they attack the Jew? They come after Christianity. They're going to come after, if you're labeled as a Christian, they're going to come after you too, and a Republican. I've called them the two R's, folks. Religion and Republicans. And right now, the state, our nation, is labeling people that are Christians as terrorists.
Could it be they found out something that sounds a little scary and are now labeling anyone close to Trump that is a vocal Christian and is proposing conservative policies as a dangerous Christian nationalist? Could it be that? Here's the document. It's on a U.S. government website. It links Christians with January 6th. Now how? Well, because some of the people there, quote, perceived themselves to be Christians. Oh my gosh. There were signs that said, Jesus is my Savior and Jesus is my King. In some of the events before January 6th, some attendees prayed. Now, if prayer and signs that say Jesus is my Savior are the measuring stick for this new national security threat, we're in serious trouble here. But Christians shouldn't be at all worried here, though, right? It's not like the FBI has targeted Christians before under Joe Biden.
Just like History Watch 3 years ago on January 6th, when insurrectionists stormed this very Capitol and placed a dagger to the throat of American democracy. Many of you were here on that darkest of days. We all saw with our own eyes the insurrectionists were not patriots. They'd come to stop the peaceful transfer of power, to overturn the will of the people. January 6th lies about the 2020 election and the plots that steal the election posed a great, gravest threat to U.S. democracy since the Civil War. But they failed. America stood. The threat to democracy must be defended. My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that. This is the moment to speak the truth and to bury the lies.
Do you know what happened after October 7th? Something that I said we would see. You know what I said? And I've been prophesying, and I've been telling you God's going to give us exactly what we want. Because every form of evil at one point is going to be coming into America on U.S. soil. You hear what I'm saying? You who don't want God, you get God out of, just no God. You know what? You're going to have no God, not Jesus Christ anyway. You're going to be finding out Allah is going to be the new God. I know it sounds crazy, huh, folks? This is all scriptural. I'm telling you right now. You don't like God, you don't like Jesus, God's going to give you exactly what you want. You can pray to Allah instead. Because of our sins, folks. Because of what the United States is doing and how far gone we are. That God's going to give us exactly what we want. You don't want Jesus Christ, you want God gone? You're going to get that. And you know what hit our shores? I said one of those coincidences. We've been having Islam.
This is a montage of protests at the White House over the weekend, Saturday night, where they're yelling Allahu Akbar as they try to scale the White House fence. Watch this.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Fuck Joe Biden! Fuck Joe Biden! Genocide Joe! Genocide Joe! Let's go with genocide! America wants Palestine free! What the fuck you mean? America wants Palestine free! America, don't stand with Israel! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
I'm sorry, but there is something chilling about hearing that call, which the 9/11 terrorists were screaming as they flew those planes into the Trade Center right outside of our White House, seeing our White House within steps of these fanatics who...
I need you to understand, when these things were said, none of this made any sense, which is why you should begin to understand that this is prophetic, that this is not a coincidence. One of my initial prophecies I said at a time when we weren't doing anything.
Our president, whoever it is going to become powerful, militarily, engaged in conflict overseas. Now that's a sure word. Those two are sure.
And now what are we seeing unlike we've ever seen before?
Overnight, the new year bringing increasing fears that Israel's war with Hamas could escalate into a wider conflict. The U.S. military saying for the first time it killed Iran-backed Houthi rebels after Navy helicopters came under fire in the Red Sea, where Houthi fighters have attacked commercial ships from Yemen. U.S. Central Command saying the helicopters, acting in self-defense after being fired upon, responded by sinking 3 small Houthi boats that were trying to attack a container ship. A 4th boat fled. It comes as Israeli forces release video of heavy fighting in Gaza. The IDF saying it expects the war with Hamas to likely last throughout the entirety of 2024.
But America is now engaged on multiple fronts. From the U.S. Eisenhower overnight, attacks launched against the Houthi militia in Yemen. A regional conflict has entered a dangerous new phase, and America's calculated attacks could have unexpected consequences.
You're going to see martial law on U.S. soil.
This nation will see martial law.
I'm telling folks, I can't reiterate this anymore. The writing is on the wall. Of course, I would say the latter part is only based on if the week opens this year. But there's a word. I want you to hear something, folks. Listen to me. God gave me a word for this year. I told you what he called last year. Last year would be a year of precursors. This year, I'm not going to give it to you yet. I'm sorry. I'll give it to you in the next video. which is only going to be those that aren't on heart defibrillators or anything. I mean, don't have a heart pacemaker, what do you want to call it? You may want to avoid that video if you can't take truth, and that's not something I've ever wanted to deviate. As long as I've had this ministry, that I would give it to you, whatever God gave to me, whatever I felt needed to be given, because I wasn't going to whitewash it and sugarcoat it. Civil war is coming to the United States, to U.S. soil, folks. I'm telling you, it's coming right here. You'll wish and pray that there was a government, an established government. You don't want Trump again. You'll wish and pray that there was a president and a structured government on U.S. soil, and it's not going to happen because we are going to civil war. God's going to give America, at least half of America, what she wants. There's not going to be an America. Look for more to come. Until next time, take care and God bless. You who hate America, dishonor the flag, won't bow to, you bow a knee to the flag, you don't like America, God's going to take America away from you. If you don't like her, you're not going to have her. You hear what I'm saying? You who hate America, you're going to get what you want, exactly what you want. There's not going to be an America. You don't want Trump, you hated Trump, you're not even going to have a president. You better hear me. You don't want God, you've taken God out of everything, there's not going to be a God, not a Jesus Christ anymore. You're going to get to have Allah. Allah can be your new God since you didn't like Jesus Christ. You didn't want borders, want everybody to come on in. You're going to have everybody and every kind of evil coming on into America. And with the eventual borders you do get, they're going to be enemy lines. You're going to wish you had wanted to had borders, but you're going to get exactly what you want. You don't want peace. You who enjoy, you just want crazy anarchy, lawlessness. God's going to hand you warfare, folks. You're going to get exactly what you want. You hate law, anarchy, you're going to get lawlessness, I'm telling you that. A nation divided against itself is not going to stand. I'm going to tell you this, folks. God's going to divide America right down the middle. Physically. You're going to watch this continent divide. When all this is said and done, you're going to regret it.